Welcome back, everyone. Next, we have Ideal Power Inc. It trades on the NASDAQ under the symbol IPWR and is pioneering the development and commercialization of its broadly patented bidirectional semiconductor power switch, creating highly efficient and eco-friendly energy control solutions for electric vehicle charging, renewable energy, energy storage, UPS, data center, solid state circuit breaker, and other industrial and military applications. Happy to welcome President, CEO, and Director Dan Brdar and CFO Tim Burns. Nice to see you, gentlemen.
Nice to be here. Thanks for having us.
All right, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you.
So our technology, what we call B-TRAN, is a disruptive semiconductor power switch. And it really has some compelling advantages over conventional power switch technologies such as IGBTs. It also addresses some large and growing markets, things like electric vehicles, renewable energy, particularly when paired with energy storage, solid-state circuit breakers, UPS systems for data centers, and motor drives. We do have a fabulous business model. It is asset light. We're really just leveraging the existing silicon processing infrastructure that's out there. From a commercial perspective, we launched our first products here in 2023, and we're engaged with multiple customers in each of our key target markets. We do have an ongoing development program with Stellantis, a top 10 global automaker, for a custom B-TRAN module for their EV drivetrain, for their EV platform. And from a balance sheet perspective, we have cash runway through 2024 with no debt. And our technology is very well protected. We have a patent estate of 82 issued and 39 pending patents. So what is B-TRAN? You can see there an image of a B-TRAN die. It's about the size of a dime. If you flipped it over, it would look the exact same on the other side. So what's unique about B-TRAN is it is an architecture. So just like IGBT or MOSFET is an architecture, B-TRAN is an architecture. And it's fabricated on both sides of the wafer. So typically with semiconductor devices, there's just processing happening on one side of the wafer. For our technology, it's actually fabricated on both sides of the wafer. And then we can leverage that same B-TRAN die across many applications. So whether it's a renewable energy installation, if it's for an electric vehicle, if it's for solid-state circuit breaker, it utilizes the same die. The compelling advantages of B-TRAN are it's inherently bidirectional, so it can handle energy flow in either direction. That's particularly important in applications involving batteries where you're charging and discharging the battery. It also has very low losses. So this results in lower user costs. So for instance, in an EV, improved range, in a renewable energy system, more kilowatt hours from the system. And then because of those lower losses, there's less heat that needs to be dissipated. So OEM products can be smaller and lower cost if they incorporate B-TRAN. So as I had mentioned, B-TRAN is inherently bidirectional. Excuse me. It would replace 4 conventional devices in a bidirectional switch. So with conventional technologies, you pair IGBTs and blocking diodes to handle energy flow in both directions. For the B-TRAN, it's all done in a single die with conduction losses that are more than 5 times better than the conventional approach. If we look at what is the serviceable addressable market for B-TRAN, it's already over $3.5 billion. It's forecasted to grow to $7.6 billion here over the next 5 years. The main segments of that market, energy and power. So if you think about renewable energy paired with energy storage, standalone storage, microgrids, EV charging, that's a $1.4 billion SAM for B-TRAN. If you look at solid-state switchgear, so if you're looking at transmission and distribution systems, things such as solid-state circuit breakers and relays, that is a $1 billion SAM for B-TRAN. The automotive sector, which is a little bit longer term, when you look at things like the traction inverter, the drivetrain of the vehicle, the onboard charger, that's a $3.6 billion SAM for B-TRAN. And then the industrial segment's a $1.6 billion SAM, and that's things like motor drives and the UPS systems for data centers that I mentioned earlier. And it's growing at a pretty strong clip. It is 16% CAGR over that 5-year period. If you look at B-TRAN's impact in electric vehicles, it's primarily used in the higher power applications within the vehicle. So things like the traction inverter, the power DC to DC converter, the onboard charger, and also circuit protection within the vehicle. The primary challenges for mass adoption of EVs today are cost and range anxiety. B-TRAN really helps in both of these areas. One, it's more efficient, which will result in improved range. We estimate that to be a 7 to 10% improvement in EV range if you utilize the B-TRAN technology. And then it's much lower cost than the silicon carbide alternatives. Power semiconductor content in an EV drivetrain is approximately $1,100 per vehicle, and it's higher than that, maybe 2 to 3 times higher than that for luxury models. So B-TRAN can have a significant impact in really accelerating the adoption of EVs and just improving their performance at lower cost. We do have, as I had mentioned, a development program with Stellantis. We entered into that program for a custom B-TRAN power module for the EV drivetrain inverter in Stellantis' next generation EV platform. Last year, we successfully completed phase 1 of that program and secured phase 2 of this multi-year development agreement. We're now underway with phase 2, and we actually expect to complete that ahead of schedule here this quarter. We were, late last year, named a 2023 Stellantis Venture Awards finalist. That also allowed us to name Stellantis as the first customer we've been able to publicly name given NDA considerations. And our current expectation for phase 3, which we're looking to secure here later this year, is to take the custom B-TRAN module through automotive qualification, because the target for the program is to have a production-ready custom B-TRAN module in 2025. In terms of other commercial agreements and collaborations, we've announced several where we've actually shipped packaged B-TRAN devices along with a test kit to these large companies in the program. That includes a second top 10 global automaker, so different than Stellantis, a top 10 global solar provider, 2 Forbes Global 500 power management market leaders, a tier 1 global automotive supplier, and global providers of backup power solutions and power converters as well. In terms of our commercial products, we have the discrete B-TRAN, so a single package die that's rated at 1200 volts and 50 amps. And we've actually tested that up to 150 amps, so significantly higher than the published rating. We have a multi-die SymCool power module, really targeting the solid-state circuit breaker market and things like EV protection, circuit protection as well. There's $1 billion SAM for solid-state switchgear, which I showed in the earlier slide. And we've actually tested that SymCool power module up to 430 amps, so well above its published rating. And this will really be the first source of product revenue for Ideal Power, as we were able to roll. This is our first product that we rolled out. And there's high demand, particularly with those 2 companies that I had mentioned, Forbes Global 500 power management market leaders in our test and evaluation program evaluating the SymCool technology. We also more recently announced the SymCool IQ intelligent power module. That's also rated at 1200 volts and 160 amps, and it takes that SymCool power module and adds an integrated driver. There's a $1.4 billion SAM for energy and power markets, so the market that would be addressed by the SymCool IQ. And it's really targeting things like renewables, energy storage, and EV charging, which would be the second source of revenue for us behind the solid-state circuit breaker market. We estimate that at scale, our products will generate about a 50% gross margin. And there's also the potential to improve that through licensing, and really particularly customer-driven licensing. So for instance, if a large automotive company wanted to have a second source of supply, wanted to have a larger source of supply than a small public company like Ideal Power, we would entertain licensing the manufacturer of our B-TRAN device to a larger player in the semiconductor space. Our 2024 milestones that we put out here recently, one is to successfully complete phase 2 of that development program with Stellantis. Again, we're targeting to do that here this quarter. Secure phase 3 of that development program with Stellantis. Just working with a large company, that'll probably be a couple months after we complete phase 2 of the program, but that's another milestone for us that's really critical to get B-TRAN commercialized in EV applications. Also, to complete the qualification of a second high-volume production fab. So the middle of last year, we qualified our first high-volume production fab. Actually, that's located in Asia. We're looking to qualify a second high-volume fab here in Europe later this year. We'll be working to convert the large OEMs in our test and evaluation program, a lot of which I mentioned here a couple slides ago, convert those into design wins or custom development agreements similar to our agreement with Stellantis. We'll be looking to add multiple distributors for our SymCool products that we launched last year. Initial sales of our SymCool IQ intelligent power module are also expected this year, and we'll begin third-party automotive qualification testing of our B-TRAN technology. In terms of our patent estate, 82 issued and 39 pending patents. 36 of those issued patents are issued outside of the United States, so places like Japan, South Korea, China, Europe, and India. And these patents are pretty broad in terms of their coverage. So it's not just the architecture itself. We have patents related to the packaging, how you control the device, some double-sided device manufacturing related patents, and also some application-specific patents as well. But the overall process flow of how do you make a double-sided device in a standard silicon fab using standard silicon processing equipment, we treat as a trade secret. So even if somebody reviewed our patents, was willing to infringe upon those patents, they still wouldn't know what we've learned here over the last few years in terms of how do you make a double-sided device. You can see here some recent news, obviously mostly commercial in nature, including Stellantis naming us as a finalist in their 2023 Stellantis Venture Awards. From a capital perspective, we have just under 6 million shares outstanding, just under 2 million shares on a fully diluted, options and warrants, so just under 8 million shares on a fully diluted basis. Our cash balance at last reporting was just about $11 million with a clean balance sheet and no debt. But with that, that's a quick run through the presentation. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Great job. Yes, we have some questions. Starting off with Rock Baker. First of all, congratulations on your continued progress. Do you have any timeline on the large POs that have been mentioned previously?
Yeah, so we don't have specific time yet. We'll announce them as they come in. We're expecting to receive, I would say that it's first be pretty modest in terms of those companies are going to have to actually design the devices into their products. So there'll be small orders initially, followed by much larger volume orders, actually, once they launch the products incorporating B-TRAN. But we'll be looking to announce orders here over the coming months.
And Sherry Palmer asks, which market do you see the highest demand for your product? Is it EV?
You know, it's really a split between EV and renewables and industrial. But the nice thing about the way we're rolling out the product is I think everybody understands and appreciates that the automobile sector takes longer for their design cycles. And in the interim, we can really start to capture what is also a very large market segment for power semiconductors in the renewables and industrial applications to drive our early revenue. And the nice thing for us is it's the same B-TRAN die in all of those applications. They're just packaged a little differently in terms of what's required for the application. So it gives us the ability to have multiple large segments that will adopt the technology at their own rates.
And this is pretty much a follow-up question with that from Woody Stellantis. Is this going to lead to other EV platforms?
It is. We actually have a second top 10 automaker that is evaluating our technology. They have devices in hand, and we're talking with them about how do we grow that into a program like what we're doing with Stellantis.
And Enrique Ferguson asks, what is the savings on the 4 devices the B-TRAN replaces versus the cost of the B-TRAN opposed to a traditional single-sided chip?
Yeah, so a B-TRAN will be probably at scale 10 to 20% higher than an individual IGBT. So if you're talking about in a bidirectional application where you need 2 IGBTs, it will actually be significant cost savings.
And Christina Tate says the EV 7 to 10% increase in range. Has this been tested in any EVs, or is that estimated? Since the range is not that great on many EVs, this is pretty substantial. Talk about it.
I agree. It is substantial. It's really based on some work that Toyota had done. Toyota looked at the improvements in power semiconductor efficiency in the drivetrain, and they did a very extensive modeling of what that translates to in terms of the efficiency of their electric vehicles. So we actually built on that work to look at, with our improvement in efficiency, what does that translate to in terms of the improvement in range? So it's really based on some pretty comprehensive modeling work that's been done by Toyota on semiconductor performance and its impact on range.
Neil Barton asks, how does the licensing increase supply? Can you explain that and how the licensing fees would be structured?
Yeah, you know, we spent the last couple of years making sure that our technology could be made in a conventional silicon fab. So the ability to go to another wafer fabricator under a licensing agreement, there's enormous amount of silicon capacity that's out there to make power semiconductors. So the investment is already out there. We could simply teach them the process flow and teach them the things they need to know to do double-sided processing. The arrangement that would be put in place is going to vary a little bit based on the customer demand that we're bringing and the particular licensee. We would probably look for some money up front and then a per part royalty that we would get as a result of them actually making devices.
Darren McCarty wants you to comment on the 16% compound annual growth. Is it sustainable or will it taper off at some point?
Yeah, so that's based on actually external forecasts provided by some of the players in the space that really look at what the potential growth is in the market. So we're utilizing market data, and then we're applying that to which segments of the market where B-TRAN really fits well to determine what the serviceable addressable market is. So if you look out there, I mean, that's what the industry forecasts are showing, particularly very large growth continuing in EVs and renewable energy as well. And then solid state circuit breakers, particularly with an enabling technology like B-TRAN with its ultra low conduction losses, can not only penetrate that market, but we think there's the opportunity to actually even expand that market just because of the advantages that we bring to the solid state circuit breaker solution.
And we've got another question about Stellantis from David Schneider. Behind Stellantis in your pipeline is another automotive company. So without breaking the NDA, can you at least tell us if that company sells more or less vehicles than Stellantis, especially in 2022 or 2023?
I can't off the top of my head. I don't look at them year over year to see how they compare with one another. But they are a top 10 automaker, and they are somebody that's been in and around the EV space. So I think you can probably get to a shorter list without too much work. Yeah.
Here's another question. If you only got 250 content per vehicle or just 500,000 vehicles, the gross profit to you is very high. So that potential seems to be completely ignored by the market. Has any sell side analyst covering the company tried to model what you could earn when this kicks in?
Yeah, so the benchmark company actually does have a model that's out there. I would say we haven't provided revenue guidance to this point just because we need to get more familiar with the adoption cycle and the design times for some of these large companies in the program. So it's been difficult to model future results. Now that we've published the serviceable addressable market for really by segment in terms of the customers that we're looking at, I think sell-side analysts would have a much easier time to model based on just assumptions around penetration rate into those markets. But I would say that the model that's out there now is lack that information. So I think really right now is when you'd expect to start seeing people actually have much more detailed bottoms-up approaches to financial modeling for Ideal Power.
Thank you for that. Rosemary May asks, is there a benefit of your product in any AI computer applications? And if so, how are you breaking into the market?
For AI, it's really dependent a lot on the data centers and the ability to handle all that data. One of the places where our technology can have a significant impact is on the UPS systems that are in every data center. If you look at data centers, their largest operating cost is electricity. UPS systems that provide that protection for the data center from the grid in the event of power disruptions are continuously conducting devices. We did some work just looking at the typical data center, and if the UPSs in the average data center included B-TRAN instead of conventional semiconductors, they could have a $2 million savings per year just in reduced electricity costs.
So Sam Medina asks, is there a licensing solution for major chip makers? Because this tech is truly intriguing.
We would be willing to put a license in place if it was truly customer driven. We would really want that to be driven by the fact that a customer that is moving to volume has demand, and as a result, it's beyond what we would want to either make ourselves or rely on our own fabs to do. Because it gives you the ability to have much better terms than if you were trying to license it to another large semiconductor manufacturer without that customer demand. So we're really going to let it be a customer-driven activity to actually do the licensing.
Sean wants you to talk about your cap structure, saying there are very little shares outstanding. So will you be issuing more for a future raise? And if so, when and how much are you looking for?
Yeah, so we have capital to take us through 2024. We also have some warrants that are set to expire here later this year that are deeply in the money that'll bring in an additional, it's over $1 million in exercise proceeds from those warrants. So for us, it's just, we're really been focused on executing, but we'll look for opportunities for strategic investments. Like Stellantis, for instance, has a venture fund that is an opportunity potentially to get in some less dilutive capital. But we have no near-term plans to raise capital, but we'll continue to evaluate that as market conditions improve.
And Ben Blair asks, how much of the product are you producing yourself? And what are you outsourcing? And where are you outsourcing?
Yeah, we're actually not producing any of it ourselves. We're really leveraging the huge investment that's already been made in silicon device manufacturing. So we have a volume fab that is automotive qualified in Asia, but not China, that actually produces the wafers for us. And then we have two packaging firms, one also in Asia and one in the United States, that actually take those wafers, dice them, and package them for electrical connection. So we'll be adding a second high volume auto qualified fab in Europe a little bit later this year. So we're really just leveraging the investment. And it's why we focus so much on developing a process to make the technology that could be made in pretty much any silicon fab. So that it doesn't require capital for special equipment. It doesn't require us to own a fab. It really is a fabless asset light model that lets us leverage what's already been done in the industry.
And Bruce Froelich, I hope I said that correctly, asks, how competitive do you see your products versus your competition, specifically Infineon and onsemi, et cetera?
Well, it depends which product you look at. For the conventional devices like silicon IGBTs, we think we're going to be very competitive because we offer such a significant improvement in losses. And understand that for a lot of power electronics, the losses drive the size of the product. If you think about a power converter, for example, for solar, the losses related to the semiconductors drive how much thermal management there needs to be, which drives how big the enclosure has to be. So there's a lot of value impact from something that's more efficient. If you look at where some of the industry is going towards silicon carbide devices, we're significantly more cost competitive. To give you sort of a frame of reference, if I were to go out and buy a silicon wafer today, it would cost me about $60. If I want to buy a silicon carbide wafer, it's about $800. And that's before you go through processing them. So just the raw material cost is substantially higher for silicon carbide. So we think we've got a pretty compelling advantage that we can bring with higher performance without the increase in cost associated with these wide bandgap materials.
And last question from Chris, asking about any concern about not fulfilling orders. Can you fulfill all you receive in a timely manner according to your purchase orders?
We think so. That's it's part of why we're going through and qualifying this second high volume fab in the Europe, because we also want to make sure that we're protecting ourselves from any supply chain disruptions like we all saw when COVID came along. So we've got to geographically disperse sources of supply, and we're not single sourced for anything.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much. Do you have any closing remarks for our viewers today?
I would just thank everybody for joining us. We think this is really going to be an exciting year for us now that we are starting to get to name customers. We've got a lot of interesting things in the pipeline. So please stay tuned to our announcements. I think you're going to find that it's going to be a pretty exciting year for Ideal Power.
Wonderful. Congratulations on this great, successful update. We'll see you again in the future.
Thanks, Deanna.
Okay, everyone, stay with us. We'll be back with Myriad Uranium. We'll be right back.